Hello and welcome back. In the previous video, we talked about the basics of REST API and its uses. In this video, I will provide a walkthrough of the REST API codebase, available in the WordPress code, to gain a more in-depth understanding of the REST API. Let's start by opening the main REST API.php file, which is available in the WP includes folder. All the REST API functions and utilities are present in this file. You can see there is a version 4.4. In WordPress version 4.4, the REST API was introduced. In this file, you can find the constant REST API version. The constant is also used in the namespace. For example, if we use wp/v2/posts, here wp/v2 is the namespace and post is the route. Here the v2 version has been used. Having versioning in place is very helpful. For example, let's say you want to change the response or structure of a REST API request. If you make changes, it could break the front end where the REST API request is being used. If you modify the key value pairs or any other part of the response, it might break the front end implementation or any application relying on that request. Instead of modifying an existing REST API request, you can create a REST route with a different version. The new version can be placed under a namespace so that all the old requests continue to work without interruption. Later on, developers working on the front end can update their implementations to use the new version of the REST API request. This approach ensures that breaking changes are avoided. So the REST API version currently is 2.0. Now let's talk about the register REST route function. This function is primarily used to create a custom route. In the upcoming videos, we will explore this function in detail and register a custom route for our own plugin as a demonstration. It is recommended to use this within the REST API init hook. When you hook it to your callback function, it only gets executed when the REST API endpoint is accessed and does not affect normal execution. That's the primary purpose of the register REST route function. Now, let's look at the register REST field function. This function allows you to register a custom field, a new field, to an existing WordPress object type. Object type refers to the content types like posts, media, terms, taxonomies, and so on. This function enables you to add new field to these objects. For instance, if you already have a post route and you are retrieving all the default information available in WordPress code, but you want to add a new field, you can do this using the register REST field function. You can go through all the arguments and it will be helpful to understand this function better. All these practical implementation will be covered in future videos. Now let's talk about REST API init function. This function is executed when the REST API is initialized. It is responsible for adding rewrite rules and query variables. We will also explore what rewrite rules are added by the REST API and how WordPress determines that the current request is a REST API request. Now, if we go through here, we can see the same function added. So you can check how custom rewrite rules have been added. Now check the REST get URL prefix. It would return wp-json, which is a REST-based URL prefix. If any other request comes apart from this, we have to follow these rules. So here you can see this is another endpoint which defaults to wp-json. This route will match the first route and the second will match a sub-route. For example, wp/v2/post. For this request, this rewrite rule would be matched. I will also give you a walkthrough of this. For example, let me just print the template redirect function. Here we can print a tag or get option. The rewrite rules are saved in the options table under the rewrite rules option. So if we check the front end, you can now see the wp-json routes. Alright, these 4 rewrite rules have been added. So wp-json, which is our base route, and wp-json will be matched for other routes like wp/v2/posts or any other route references. And this is if someone is accessing through index.php. These rewrite inputs have been used. Additionally, there are filters that can be used to filter the URLs. A function we can see over here, WP, is serving REST requests. If we go to its definition, a defined condition is used. The REST request constant will be defined when WordPress identifies that it is a REST API request. Before performing REST API request, WordPress sets this constant. This constant can be useful if you want to execute specific actions only for REST requests. If it's not a REST request, you can skip those actions. In this case, the constant becomes very helpful. Now, let's see how to handle the initial REST route. This function will register the default REST API endpoints. All the REST API endpoints you see in the endpoint references have been registered through this function. The function retrieves all the list of post types using getPostTypes. It only retrieves post types registered with the showInRest argument set to true. Then it calls the controller class for each post type. For example, in the movie library post type, we have used WP REST post controller and we have used it for our custom implementation. This controller is retrieved using the getREST method. It simply passes this REST controller class. This controller is retrieved using the getREST method. It simply passes the REST controller class, which is defined as a property here, and then calls the register routes method. This is the register routes method. It is a part of the WP REST controller, and this is the base class. This class is extended by other controllers. For example, all the controllers and other informations are part of the REST API. If we look here in the endpoint section, you see the main REST controller, which is the base controller. Here you see the post controller. This class is used to register routes, manage their callback functions, and handle REST API requests through this controller. The register route method in this class is the one responsible for registering routes. This method overrides the base controller's implementation. It calls the register REST route function. Here you can see the REST namespace. The namespace such as wp/v2 is defined here. If a namespace is not passed, it defaults to wp/v2. The REST base is also defined. For custom post type, this REST base is set to a specific value, such as film. This base is then used for route registration. That's why if I pass film over here, it works. The REST base is used to register routes. By default, the object name, that is the post type slug, is used as the REST base. Then the base routes are registered. After that, various endpoints are passed. These endpoints define different methods for the same route. For example, a get method is used for readable endpoints. The WP REST server is the main class that handles REST API requests. It accepts the REST API request, identifies it, and calls the associated functions and then returns the response. We will go through all these functions and the arguments when we learn about registering the custom endpoints. We will also see in the sequence how WordPress identifies which is a REST API request and which functions will be called, and whether the WP REST server class fits in the picture, along with the WP REST request, WP REST response, and all these controllers. Also, they used createable, which is our post method. Okay, this method will be used to create an item. This route will have two endpoints, a get endpoint and a post endpoint. The get endpoint is for reading the items and the post endpoint is for creating the post. Similarly, other routes will be introduced and registered for single posts to read, update, or delete them. All these constants will be set here. For a readable post, the get method is used. For an editable post, post, put, and patch method is used. Any of these methods can be used when the user or developer sends the REST API request. For delete, the delete method will be used. These are all the methods supported by the REST API HTTP methods. In this way, all the REST routes will be registered. Similarly, they will be registered for revisions if the post type supports revisions, and then for custom post types controller as well. If we want to see which default types are available, if we go here and I call types, you can see that post is a default type. Then pages, which is also a WordPress core default type. Then attachment and their own links, like the REST API links. The nav menu item is also a post type. So you can see all custom and default post types available. You can also see our custom post type movie and person. Similarly for taxonomies as well, here you can see the taxonomies as well. If we go here and I pass taxonomies, you will see categories, post tag, nav menu, WP pattern category, our genre, and our career taxonomy. So we can also have a list of custom post types and custom taxonomies. Similarly, we also have a controller for post statuses. You can also go through that. And then for terms, we also have different endpoints, like independent routes for the custom post type. Similarly, WordPress registers routes for custom taxonomies, and similarly, we are using the WP REST terms controller. That controller will register our routes. All controllers can be found in the REST API folder in the endpoints. Similarly, it also registers routes for taxonomies, as we use the REST terms controller for that when registering the taxonomy. All the controllers can be found in the REST API folder in the endpoints. You can find the terms controller here. This is the terms controller which is used for the custom taxonomy. And here is the register routes method. Similar to our posts or custom post type, it will register the method to perform CRUD operations. WordPress also registers routes for users, application passwords, comments, and everything else. All of this is handled from here, and this is the filter WP REST search handler. So if you want to change it, you can do that as well. Then for blocks, plugins, sidebars, widgets, and most of the default core routes, you can find them registered by WordPress. So this concludes our codebase overview. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Jai WordPress.